Good evening and welcome. Tonight we're going to be going over the history and geography of Senegal. Senegal is a country in West Africa. It borders, let me get my pencil, and let me move this book out the way. We're going to flip through this book after I go over the history. Senegal borders Mauritania here. It borders Mali, Guinea, and Guinea-Bissau. Of course, it has a coastline on the Atlantic Ocean. And of course, Senegal shares this long border with the Gambia. Now, I've already done the history and geography of the Gambia. Be sure to check that out because the Gambia has a very interesting history, in my opinion. Really fascinating. I won't spoil anything for you. Be sure to check that out. But the Gambia is shaped so oddly because it's formed around the Gambia River, which also flows into Senegal down here. But the biggest, most important river in Senegal would be, of course, the Senegal River, which forms its entire northern border up here, and obviously what the country is named after. The border with Mali is on the Falémé River, and the other big important river would be the Casamance, which flows down here in the southern region. Casamance. This region is called the Casamance region, which we're going to talk about during its history. The biggest geographical note of importance would be this peninsula right here. It's called Cap Vert, or Green Cape in English, or Cape Verde. It is the westernmost point in the African continent. It's also where the capital city of Dakar is located. And you can't see on this map, but there's a very small island to the south here. I'll show it to you when we go through this book, called Gorée Island, which is also very important to its history. Another major city would be Saint Louis up here. And there's also the city of Ziguinchor down here in the south, which is like the biggest city in the Casamance region. Also, in terms of waterways, we have this lake up here, the Lac du Coeur. It is a freshwater lake, the largest lake in Senegal. It is where all of these cities you see around here get their fresh water from. But you also can't see on this map, it is on the peninsula over here, is a small lake known as Lake Retba, or Lac Rose, which means pink lake in French. I'll show you a picture in this book, but it is an actual pink lake. If the sun, warms it up just right, a mixture of the salt and the bacteria that live it turn the water a bright pink. It's really cool. The regions of Senegal, let me break it up into the climate regions. So the one up here is the Sahel region, which the Sahel is what separates the Sahara Desert from the lush jungles of the rest of West Africa, the rest of the West. So the Sahel is technically a desert. This region up here where you see nothing is straight desert, like sand and everything, but the Sahel for the most part does have its trees and its greenery, but not like a typical lush green, not really good for farming or anything like that. This region down here is also pretty arid, pretty dry. It does have its share of green, but not lush. It's not the most ideal for farming, but this region grows a lot of peanuts. Senegal is the 10th largest producer of peanuts in the world. So that is its biggest cash crop in this region. Then down here in the south, in the Casamance region, is very, very lush and green. It's considered a tropical savanna climate. Very forested, very jungly, and really great farmland. This region over here even has rice paddies. Very rich soil. It's the breadbasket of Senegal, it's called. Over here we can see Neokolokoba National Park, where all of the, well, not all of, but most of like the big animals of Senegal live, like lions, elephants, monkeys, like animals you associate with Africa, warthogs, I'll show you in this book. But what I think is most interesting, and I did point this out in my video on the Gambia, because it's also within the border of the Gambia, the region around it is called Senegambia, Senegal and the Gambia. This area over here of Senegambia is home to the largest concentration of stone circles in the world. There's hundreds of these stone circles, very tall stones, but like small circles in terms of like other stone circles around the world. I'm like a huge stone circle nerd, so I'm really interested in this kind of thing. What's interesting about the Senegambian stone circles is that they were constructed between the 3rd century BCE and the 16th century CE. And no one knows why exactly they were constructed. Some of them do have burial sites inside of them, like one person that was apparently of importance. Some have mass graves, some have no graves at all. There are some stones that point toward the sunrise on winter solstice. Like it has all the bells and whistles of classic stone circles, but we really don't know anything else about them. I think it's really fascinating, but I think that's a good segue to go into its history, because Senegal in its ancient times had many, many different tribes. Obviously there are some down here building circles, and we'll never know why. Many, many different tribes, and it led to the formation of some of the great West African kingdoms. The Takurur kingdom rose up in the 9th century. They were mostly over here. The Jolof Empire rose up in the 13th, and in the 14th century was kind of the height of their power. They were mostly over here. Modern-day Senegal was also part of the Mali and Songhai empires, which I've kind of touched on when I talked about Ghana. The Ghana Empire was just outside of its borders. But the region really changed when the Almoravids came from the north of Africa. I know I've called them Almoravids in all my other videos. I've just learned in my research that it's Almoravids. They were Muslim traders from the north, like Morocco, Algeria region up here, that was trading with the huge empires down here. So once they came into contact with the tribes of Senegal, they brought Islam with them. And the Takurur kingdom was the first one to adopt Islam. Almost all the others did after a while, and Islam is still the majority religion in Senegal today. I won't get into the history of some of the tribal conflicts, because this is a brief summation. I don't want to be here all night with you guys. You're going to have to fall asleep eventually. But it is really fascinating. So a lot of the tribes, especially up here in the north, fought over territories, what have you. But of course everything changed when the Europeans arrived. The Portuguese were the first to arrive in the 15th century. They settled around here. Obviously this peninsula being a good port and harbor. And many European nations fought over possession of this territory. I mean, they fought over all of West Africa, but this area in particular was very useful for these rivers that went into the heart of Africa. And this really nice natural port here. It wound up turning into an England versus France thing, which is how England got to have this part of the Gambia. And France wound up having the rest of this region, including the peninsula. France officially took over the region in 1677. They founded this city here of Saint-Louis. It became their capital of French West Africa, which was a big chunk of land here in West Africa that the French controlled. This was their main hub of transport and all of that. And my favorite fact, because The Little Prince is one of my favorite books, the author Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, he wasn't an author by trade. He was an a postal carrier who came by airplane from France to Saint Louis here. And, he delivered mail back and forth, and he drafted the story in his head while he was flying back and forth. And The Little Prince does have a lot of African elements to it. Part of it takes place in the Sahara. Lots of mention of baobab trees, which grow all throughout this area here in Senegal. Baobab trees are very important to many Senegalese people. Lots of tribes and things like that. You'll see pictures in here if you've never seen a baobab tree. They're majestic. So Saint Louis was, the big capital. It's actually an island city here in the Senegal River. It was very useful for sending out enslaved people that they had kidnapped. But the island of Gorée down here was their big transportation hub after a while. They built a big slave market house to house the slaves, house being a loose term, to cram human beings together in inhumane conditions and send them out to the Caribbean and South America. Dakar wound up becoming the capital after Saint Louis. After France abolished the slave trade, I'm trying to think in my mental timeline here. After France abolished the slave trade, they decided to turn French West Africa into more of a colony territory of France. They appointed a governor named Louis Faidherbe, and he actually established the city of Dakar. He built railroads and infrastructure, things like that. He also went and fought a lot of wars with the tribes here throughout what is now Senegal. France had been fighting a lot of them. They pretty much brought down the Wolof Empire. But Louis Faidherbe was the one to really snuff out all the rest of the people who were resisting the French, particularly down here in the south. My cat is snoring, if you can hear that. I won't go into detail about Louis Faidherbe. He did some good, a lot of bad. He also married his 18-year-old niece, which is okay. Anyway, let's flash forward to the 20th century. So Senegal, or modern-day Senegal, French West Africa being part of France, a lot of men were drafted into World War I and World War II to fight. Many thousands lost their lives fighting a war that they had no part of. But after World War II, France and French West Africa and their other African territories started negotiating independence. And in June 1960, the Mali Federation was formed, which is now the countries of Mali and Senegal. They were all one country for a hot minute until they weren't a few months later. On August 20th, Senegal separated from the Mali Federation to become Senegal, its own independent nation. The first president was Leopold Sédar Senghor. He was a very interesting individual, really fascinating. He was a very learned individual. He had left Senegal to study in France. He was mainly a poet, and he brought a lot of interesting aspects of democracy into Senegal. One of those concepts was a pro-African kind of movement that, living in Europe, he gained a lot of appreciation for African culture and lifestyle, and he really tried to push, Senegalese culture, not based on what the French brought in, but what the people have always been, things like that, if you get what I mean. He actually stopped a coup at one point. Senegal's the only country in West Africa, I'm pretty sure this is true, the only country in West Africa that's never had a military coup take down their government. When he retired in 1980, he retired to focus more on his poetry. He's an interesting fellow. Every time I read about him, I found some cool new facts. At one point during World War II, he was in a German concentration camp where he just spent the whole time writing poetry, evidently. He wrote the national anthem for Senegal as well. He's just a really, really interesting man. Very beloved here in Senegal. So he retired in 1980. And I won't get into details about the intricate politics of Senegal, but in a nutshell, every transition of power through presidential administrations has been very peaceful in terms of, democracy and transitions of power, even from different political parties to another. Very stable democracy, honestly, in Senegal. Their last election was in 2019, where their president was re-elected. So next election, they'll have a new president, a new transition. There have been quite a few hiccups politically in Senegal. Nothing to really bring down the country, except for the last one I'm going to mention, has the potential to, but let's just go over some of the issues that have come up in Senegal. Starting with the Senegambia Confederation, which I've touched on in my video on the Gambia. I went really into detail about it in that video, so I won't do it here. I won't repeat myself, but in 1982, Senegal and the Gambia decided to form the Senegambia Confederation, kind of like, shared currency, open borders, things like that. It broke apart in 1989 for a variety of reasons, but one of them was Senegal's conflict with Mauritania, which the Gambia wasn't too thrilled about. In 1989, there was lots of border disputes with the farmers and rural people up here in Senegal and Mauritania. Fights broke out, war broke out, basically. I mean, in the loose terms of war, thousands lost their lives. Senegal forcibly exported. Senegal forcibly removed many Mauritanians. Mauritania forcibly removed a lot of Senegalese. Eventually, they resolved their differences, decided to just share the border. Some people were even allowed to return to their homes that they've been living in. That had the potential to be very bad for both countries, but thankfully it was peacefully resolved before it could get any worse than it was. Next, I want to bring up the sinking of the Lajula ferry in 2002. It was a ferry going from Dakar to Ziguinchor for a reason that I'll mention next. It was a lot safer to travel by ferry to the south than by land. You'll find out why soon. Thousands died in the sinking, and there were a lot of really tragic things that happened that there were a lot of questions for, but no answers. Mainly that the rescue controls, like what you would use on a ship to call for help, didn't work on the ship or were just not present. The people on shore who would have replied to it weren't at their stations when they were calling for help. The government did not arrive until the morning. That it sunk in the middle of the night, and help didn't arrive until morning, so many people died waiting to be rescued. So the government and the people in charge of that were very heavily criticized, especially after payouts to the families of those who lost their lives were very small. That was also quite an outrage. The ferry was also overloaded with passengers. It was only supposed to carry around 500 people. It had nearly 2,000 on board. Many people were never found, including the captain, actually, was never found. They were never able to get the ship out of the water. It's still there. And we'll never know an exact number of people because many people on board weren't ticketed. Not to mention the ship was sailing out at night during really bad weather conditions. It was storming, raining, and the ship had veered off really far from the coast out to waters where it was too deep for the ferry. And we'll never know why the captain decided to sail in those conditions and why he sailed so far off course. So the government tried to put all the blame on the captain, which was also an outrage. It's a very sad, tragic event. But the main issue I want to talk about is the Casamance conflict. So that started in 1982 down here in the Casamance, for a variety of reasons, one of which being that the region up here, where all of the political powers in Senegal, the capital here, the region is predominantly Muslim, and the majority of people up here are of Wolof descent. The majority down here are actually Catholics or Christian denominations, and majority Jolof descent, different cultures entirely. Not to mention that this area feels really cut off from the rest of Senegal because of the Gambia. And it being such a lush, farmable area, providing all the food for up here, they felt that they weren't receiving adequate funding down here as opposed to regions up here, which got lots of funding. So rebellions broke out and a resistance movement sprung up to fight back, like a rebel fighter group. The military of Senegal and the rebels have been fighting ever since. There have been quite a few ceasefires. Particularly, I think it was 2004 was the last big ceasefire. Since then, there have been events like bank robberies or kidnappings, executions, horrible things like that. To the point where most of the people down here don't want independence anymore. Not to mention the rebels placed many, many landmines throughout the region, which are still being found and cleared out today by like the thousands. So that's not very popular with the people who are caught in between. Actually, more recently, is last week as I'm filming this. So in January 2021, the government really started fighting back hardcore against these rebels. And in February 2021, literally a week before I'm filming this now, there were raids on 3 big camps or compounds from these rebels where they found lots of weapons, lots of landmines, marijuana fields, but like they got these camps, but there's still more out there. So it's an ongoing thing going on right now in 2021. It's something to keep our eye on, because it always has the potential to get a lot worse. The whole conflict has had the potential to get a lot worse, but thankfully it has not blown up into something horrifyingly tragic that would have brought down the whole country. You know, the government in Senegal is very stable at the moment, so it's just something to look out for in history. So that's pretty much it for history. I'm like thinking, yeah. Okay, let's just flip through the book. If I think of anything else, I'll mention it. I think I'm the first person to have checked out this book for my library. It's very brand new and squeaky. Cute. So here we have a political map of Senegal, where you can really see lots of the regions here. The wildlife preserve there, the national park, there's the capital. Yeah, and that's where it's located in Africa. Here we can see some of the buses they have. Very, very colorful and bright, and it gets pretty packed in there. Here's an example of what I mean by the semi-arid, like central region of Senegal. Very dusty. They do get affected by the Harmattan winds blowing in all the dust. So, you know, rich land, but not very good for farming like we know it. Here's a beautiful beach in Dakar. Looks really nice, actually. Really beautiful city. Here is a good example of the Sahel region. So you can see, you know, the flat, kind of dryish land, but it's still pretty green. Like it's not a desert. But you know, like this picture over here, this would be a desert, but you can still see, you know, the green back there. So it's not completely arid, you know. Here's a geographic map of Senegal. You can see the highest point's actually right here on the border of Senegal and Guinea, and it doesn't have a name. That's just the name of the nearby village. Here's the westernmost point in Africa on the peninsula. Here we can see they're watering some of the trees they're going to plant on the Great Green Wall. That's the strip of trees that the countries are planting. Did I mention this? I don't remember. 13 nations in Africa, I believe it's 13, have agreed to plant a wall of trees along the edge of the Sahara to stop the desertification. Senegal's very much part of that. Some of the pretty rivers flowing out to the sea. Here's a picture of Lac Rose, or Lake Retba. That's how pink it gets. It's really neat. Here we have some red-throated bee eaters. Senegal's home to many, many, many different bird species, and there is a park in the north where thousands of birds migrate from Europe to Senegal in the winter. A national reserve. Oh, sorry, I keep jostling the camera. Sorry. This is a beach on Corée Island, which looks lovely. Here's some cityscapes. This is Saint Louis, so you can see some of the French architecture there. This is the city of Touba, which is right there. Touba is home to the Great Mosque of Touba, which I'll bring up later on in this book, but it's the biggest, grandest, most beautiful mosque in Senegal. Very important to Islamic culture. There's a monkey. This is a man harvesting bark and sap from an incense tree. Here's a picture of a baobab tree, or upside down tree. There's lots of different nicknames for it. It's very distinct, has this big trunk and these spindly little branches. I think, yeah, okay. I know there's a picture of a snake coming up. I'm always very conscientious of snakes. Okay, it's in 2 pages. This is a kapok tree, which also has a very majestic, huge trunk. And this is an example of their canoes that they built. There'll be some better ones later on in the book, but this man's harvesting oysters attached to mangrove roots. Now, I've known people in my life who've had extreme phobias of snakes to where they couldn't even look at pictures of snakes, so I'm warning you now, there's a snake on the next page, so do with that what you will. I personally love snakes. Look at this. This is a green mamba. Very lethal, venomous snake. Very dangerous. You don't want to encounter these. But I think it's beautiful. That's like my favorite shade of green. But I'll move the snake out the way. So you can look now if you want. There we go. There's a sea turtle there. A hawksbill. Many sea turtles lay their eggs on the beaches of Senegal. Let me turn the page like this very carefully so you don't see any snakes. There we go. There's some pelicans at the bird sanctuary flying around. Here's a warthog. Cute. So this is in the Niokolo-Koba National Park where they live along with the Senegal lion, the national symbol of Senegal. Look at this gorgeous gold piece. Oh my gosh. This says this is some wool-off jewelry worn by women because women mostly wore gold, men mostly wore silver. Isn't that beautiful? Here's a picture of the stone circles. Look how neat. There are hundreds of these little circles all throughout the region. Here's some Berbers traveling. I should mention that there was a Berber tribe called, pulling out of my memory, the Senegal, that's right, because that's where we think the name Senegal comes from. There's a lot of theories, but that's the main one. It came from that tribe of Berbers. Senegal, that's what it was called. Here are some Tukulor people, who are one of the tribes that was part of the Tekrur kingdom. They're really beautiful, colorful clothes. And here's a map of some of the empires of West Africa. You can see the Ghana Empire right there, the Tekrur up here. There's the Wolof, and as you can see here, it contained part of the Mali and Songhai empires. Here's a pirogue, one of their canoes that they make out of the tree trunks. There we go. Here's the British fighting the French for control of Corée Island. And this is the fort built on Corée Island to, I keep jostling the camera, to house the slaves. So the rooms down here where men were crammed in and kept chained up. Up here and the next floor was where the slave traders lived. And this is the door of no return where people were funneled out onto the ship. Very sad. Here you can see some French and British settlements. You can see Saint Louis and Corée. This is Louis Ferder. This is a queen named Doteyala Mbodj, I believe. A queen of the Walo kingdom that fought back against Fade Arab and sadly lost, but very powerful queen. Here's a map of the French territories in Africa. You can see French West Africa here. There's Senegal. This is a drawing of Saint Louis in the 1800s, the capital of French West Africa. Here are some Senegalese men fighting in World War I. It says more than 30,000 Senegalese were killed in the war. This is Leopold Senghor, the first president of Senegal. And these are some Mauritanians being removed from the country during the conflict. Here's the Red Guard. Very nice uniform. They protect the president and his home. Here's a look of Dakar, the city, and a map down here. All of the big notable places. Up here is the African Renaissance Monument. It is a massive, massive statue. It's actually the largest statue in Africa. It's taller than the Statue of Liberty because it's placed on a hill. It's big. This is Macky Sall. He's the current president of Senegal. Here's the national flag. It says Senegal's flag consists of 3 vertical bands of green, yellow, and red. Green signifies Islam, progress, and hope. Yellow symbolizes natural wealth and economic progress, and red stands for sacrifice and determination. In the center of the yellow band is a small green 5-pointed star expressing unity and hope. Down here we can see the National Assembly in session. A poll worker collecting votes. This is the Palais de Justice de Dakar, an international tribunal court. You can see some of the judges up here. They are a court for like war crimes and crimes against humanity for Africa. That's where they're tried for horrific crimes against humanity. There's some Wolof men gathered. Here's about the national anthem. It's called Pincez tous vos corps, frappez les balafons. So it's pluck your chorus, strike the balafon. Balafon being drums, and chorus being these big instruments up here. Sorry, I'm jostling the cameras at a weird angle right now. Some fish being sold. Some women in New York City of Senegalese descent. Many Senegalese people live abroad and send money back home, particularly in France. This is a truck full of peanuts. They look very proud. A woman crushing palm nuts to make palm oil. See, this is a map of some of the resources. You can see all the peanuts there. Here's a salt mine by Lake Rose, Lake Pink Lake. Mining all the salts there. The currency of Senegal is the CFA franc. Here's a cute baby on her mom's back. Put this down. There we go. Some of the ethnic groups in Senegal. You can see a majority of Wolof groups up here, but there's many others and many more than are listed here. Basket making is a very beloved art form for many women in Senegal. Beautiful baskets there. Lady getting some milk from her cows. This is a full bay man. There we go. And a picture of some of the beautiful dances that many of the cultures of Senegal have. They're very fast and frantic, but really, really beautiful. This is the population density, so you can see a majority of people live up here, but there's still many people that live out, in the rural areas. Let's see, a Chinese cloth merchant. So there is quite an interesting population of people from Asia, particularly from Vietnam, actually, because Vietnam was once owned by France. During that war, when people fled Vietnam, many went to lots of French-speaking countries or Francophonie countries, so Senegal being one of them. This is a school for adults. The literacy rate's actually pretty low compared to lots of other free democratic countries, so These women are learning how to read Wolof. There's some kids in school and some kids in Catholic school. This is the library at Sheikh Anta Diop University. Very beautiful. These are some boys from a school called the Dara. They are the Talibé. It is a school where they just study the Quran, and the boys are sent out to beg to learn humility. This is inside the great mosque at Tuba. Isn't that beautiful? Gorgeous. And of course you take off your shoes in the mosque. This is a marabout, or one of the Islamic priests in Senegal. They have a very different form of Islam from lots of other countries. They combine a lot of tribal elements and lots of Sufism, which is more like spiritual practice. Over here is some prayer beads to count their prayers. Amulet made out of cowrie shells. I don't think I've talked about the history of cowrie shells in Africa and how they became a thing, but I'll save that for another video. This is this gorgeous mosque in Dakar. Isn't that beautiful? Look how it stands out against the blue water, the brown land there. It doesn't look real. It's gorgeous. So this is at the Grand Mosque. So I'll show you this picture first. So Sheikh Amadou Bamba was a very famous marabout of his time, particularly here in Touba. This is a very holy site. The Grand Madgal is when thousands of Muslims come to the mosque to pray at his tomb, which is what this man is doing. It's easily the holiest site of the Muslim faith in Senegal. There's a baby getting christened. And this is a nativity. Look how cute that is. I like that. Playing some drums. Gorgeous jewelry. Look at these piercings. That's lovely, isn't it? And look at this mask outfit up here. Isn't that gorgeous? This is a Diola person wearing a mask at a ceremony. All the books I have coming for you about Senegal have gorgeous pictures of these masks. They're also different and interesting. Some modern art and graffiti art as well is very prominent in the cities. Here's a famous sculptor named Ousmane Sow. This is the Ifan Museum, the Fundamental Institute of Black Africa. Youssou N'Dour is easily one of the most famous Senegalese people. This is Fatou Diom, a famous author from Senegal. Soccer is, of course, a very beloved sport in Senegal, but their national sport is called lamb, which is a form of wrestling, which it's kind of like MMA wrestling or fighting, but there's a lot of ceremonies and songs and dances before, after, and during. It's a big to-do. It's a big spectator sport, as you can see here. Very important to many cultures in Senegal. I'll carefully turn the page for you. There we go. Having fun out by the beach. Teranga being their word for like hospitality. Here's an example of what some of the rural villages look like with their thatched roof huts. There's a baby getting a checkup. So healthcare is an issue in rural Senegal since there's not a lot of doctors, and diseases like malaria can really run rampant out there. The national dish of Senegal, thé boudien. It's like a stuffed fish with lots of rice and vegetables, and is traditionally eaten with the right hand. There's a tea ceremony in Senegal called ataya, where after each serving you sweeten the tea more and more, and it's supposed to symbolize how sweet friendships can grow over time. Playing some foosball and dancing and heading out to a wedding in some beautiful colorful clothes. And that is the end of our book, so just wrap it up there. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry there's so many edits, but there are a lot of cars and what I think was a lawnmower, I apologize for all the random cuts, but I want to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found this video relaxing and educational. And be sure to subscribe because I have a couple more videos based on Senegal coming up for you this week, so don't want to miss it. Thanks again, and have a very good